Liz, who runs Angel Eyes Animal Rescue and Wildlife Rehabilitation.
Correct.
And you have a couple people with you?
Yep, this is Corinne. She is one of my very dedicated volunteers.
Good.
She has fostered for us, she has driven for us, she has done pretty much whatever we've asked for.
She's put a lot of feral cats in my house and asked me to sleep in the same building as her.
Well,
It
we'll
works.
let you get started.
Okay, since we have a smaller group, we'll do this a little more informal on some stuff too, and then open it up to like any questions you might have. Feel free to jump in as we go through each stage, because a lot of what we do is just broad span. When the community has a need, we are there. We do everything from when COVID hit, we were doing food donations. We secured a lot of dog food, cat food, horse feed, hay, with different farmers, with different warehouses out in Elmira and Waverly. So we had people running, doing transportation, went to a lot of the pantries and ended up handing out food. People that couldn't get in, we actually ended up doing some home visits. Of course, the horse feed and the hay were done by home visits. So we do that side. We do ones such as right now, we're working with the Sheriff's Department. Some cases where they're borderline and they're working on the humane side of it. We'll also help with food donations for them as well, and help them keep some bags in the back of their car for whenever they're out on calls and stuff. We do also domestics. We do more wildlife, and we've been trying to than domestics simply because of where the need is at. Domestics, we've done a lot of feral cats, as she will also tell you. We have a foster network of about 30 fosters throughout Tompkins, Chemung, Tioga, Broome, so within quite a distance even, some of them. Adoptions that we've been able to do with our domestics can go as far as, we had just taken in one humane case for the Sheriff's Department, and probably the farthest one of those adoptions we ended up doing Utica. And they're pretty intensive when we end up doing adoptions because we require home visits on everyone too. So for instance, the Utica one, we have volunteers or me and the other director, which is Sabrina, and we actually just do a road trip, go up. Sometimes ones like with Utica, we did everything by mail first and then like combined the home visit portion there. We have been known to, if we get on scene and it's not as they portrayed, I don't have a problem with walking away. And what I tell people is on the bottom of our applications, we run a little bit different from shelters because we have, in big bold letters, we reserve the right at any time to deny anyone for any reason. I have to sleep at night where I place these animals. I am not a harsh critic, but we do want them to go into a home where they're going to be successful and the family's going to be pleased with the adoption. With rescues, a lot of times you will find that the story behind the animal draws on people's emotions, so they are adopting for the wrong reason. I understand you want to give it a home, but not every animal is going to be safe. Not every child in your home placed with a dog that came from an abusive situation is going to be safe. And putting an animal into a stressful environment for its new owners as well as their animal is not a good outcome. For those of you who don't know, I also do dog control for 4 towns in Tioga County, so I've also seen the bad side that comes along with when people try rehoming and rescuing. We've done all kinds of domestics too. It's not limited to cats and dogs. I know we've done different ferrets. That's one of the albino ferrets we've had. We've done ferrets, parrots, rats, mice, chinchillas. I think who else is up on here? Hamsters, house rabbits. Actually, I came home with a goat in the back of my Blazer one time, so you never know what's going to end up on scene. For instance, one of the ones that we had just dealt with was a case you might have read about out in Appalachian, and the sheriff had gotten on scene, and there were 31 dogs, 16 roosters, 6 chickens, 6 cats, and a horse. And at the time they got on scene because of Stray Haven at the time was doing some renovations and turnover, and because of space capacities, where you could actually place these animals was extremely challenging. So we ended up working between Owego Dog Control, Angel Eyes, and Willow's Wings out in town of Maine, and we ended up making it happen. Willow's Wings took more of the livestock. We networked with each other a whole lot based on whose skill level and capacities, what they can do. She does a lot of farm animals and she has bonds and such for that, so they went there more. We ended up with, I think it was 36 after the puppies delivered of the Yorkies, Terriers, and Chihuahuas, because there were 9 puppies that came from 3 pregnant females that came in at the time. The hard part with rescue also is not everyone understands what's involved with it. So you get it's a very stressful thing to do rescue also. We get a lot of phone calls of people asking for our assistance, and we pretty much, once we had took that Appalachian case, we had to shut down our doors to any other animals right away, because literally I had 8 kennels, I think it was, in 2 bedrooms of my house, and I had like 20 little guys, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but then I had a rotation of 4 volunteers coming in the morning, coming in the evening, because for instance, that case, to give you an idea, when they came out of that situation, they were so covered with mud and feces and different items. It took a lot of volunteers, a lot of time bathing, 2 groomers, just cutting the mats from between the nails and into the ears, countless amounts of vet visits because we had mammillary cancers and tumors and ear infections and skin conditions, and it was pretty bad. We ended up with over $8,000 roughly in medical bills, and we're still not done, along with the cost of spaying and neutering. All of them except for 3 came in already altered, and the rest were not. So we worked with Spencer Animal Hospital and Dickens Memorial, and slowly at 2 a week, which takes some time because when you bring rescues in, of course they can't squish them all in the next week. So we were doing 2 a week transportations to Broome County. We actually just finished in February, and we took them in September. I'll go into the legal side a little more when we discuss Leo in a minute. But we're all privately funded from just grants. If anyone's on our Facebook, they'll see we are begging for votes right now for a chance at a grant that's in Ithaca out of one of the Ithaca Management Group. We qualified for the Weishman's grant. When all of this happened with the humane case, the Sheriff's Department did request donations, and we got a grant from them to assist with that. But we never break even usually a year. It's usually some out of pocket, and we have a lot of amazing people on top of the money that we get from donations. Usually covers just the vet and the medical side of it. We are constantly putting out requests for dog food, cat food, ferret food, and we get a lot of people that it's just a godsend. You ask for it, and Chewy shows up at our doorstep with it. So most of that type of stuff is privately funded by just our followers, supporters, prior adopters. Because the cost was so intense, this was the first time with the Yorkies that we actually asked for adoption fees, just because when we started, we didn't know how we were ever going to fund it or come out on top of it. Can you think of anything else domestic side?
A little bit about what's available in our area. So this fall in particular, Stray Haven, Broome County, and Bradford County all shut down their kennels because they were all doing either parvo outbreaks or renovations, which meant that everyone was being redirected up to Tompkins County or to Denise or to U2. U2 Animal Rescue is closing their doors. Claws and Paws on the Border has closed their doors. A lot of rescues in our county and neighboring counties didn't make it through COVID. Nobody trusted having volunteers, nobody could get funding, so a lot of them are shutting their doors. Finding someone who's willing to take small domestic animals is next to impossible. Stray Haven's wait list to take cats right now is about 4 months out. And you'll have people who call and say, come get this cat or I'm hanging it from a tree. At that point, Denise is calling me at 12:15, standing next to a sheriff going, can you get up, can you open the door, we need a foster to take a cat, please wake up. So this woman, we give her a lot of credit because I have called her at 5 a.m. with nursing kittens in the middle of a seizure, and you can't get them to a vet. She has all the vet's cell phone numbers. A lot of the vets are closing their doors around here. The Spencer vet is talking about shutting down. One of the Day Hollow vets has retired. 2 of the vets in Binghamton are retiring. The last couple of years have been rough. So finding anybody who's willing to do vet care, foster, or adoption for anything that isn't a really well socialized puppy is next to impossible in our area. So then you have someone.
And that's a good point too. The other thing that we have become very skilled at, some of this you learn as you go, and you make mistakes and you figure it out. We also found that we have been helping a lot with the humane side of it. We don't have a humane officer in Tioga County. I will try and be really politically correct on that, but it's very frustrating because we, according to AgMar right now, Agriculture and Marketing, we are only one of 2 counties that my director was aware of that does not have a humane officer. When the Sheriff's Department and myself had approached the legislative branch before, they did not feel that the expense of instilling a position like that in Tioga County was an appropriate need at this time. Back then, I have a couple people that want to try and revisit that as well. And I know Stray Haven, there was liability issues, understandably, training issues, because most of your locations are actually, like Chemung County, it's actually a position that's granted under the Sheriff's Department. So a lot of times phone calls that will come into me, and I try and be really respectful of people, is how our Sheriff's Department is not doing their job, they're not responding. You think of all the animal calls that could possibly come in from Tioga County, and you add it on top of the caseload that they're already doing with not having a designated humane officer. I have seen those people work on their own time, overtime, on my cell phone with me, trying to figure out situations. So they really are trying the best they can, but we really do need a humane officer in Tioga County. That's my spiel on that side. When you said you learn by trial and error, we have also done a lot of, because of the situation right now in Tioga County, is what can we do to assist you to keep the animal in place where it's at? And COVID was a big one where just people couldn't afford to feed the horses, they were between the UIB periods and stuff will get you through. I have become really skilled and we have invested in huge bottles of dewormers and different medications and worked with the vets on it and gotten trained on basic stuff that you can buy online. And then that way, a lot of emaciated dogs that we were seeing is basically because they have worms that have gotten out of control. Educating people, figuring out things like that. So some of it's just community interaction too.
Which has been a huge, recently to get more funding, all of the local area shelters are taking in transport dogs, which means they are bringing dogs up from the south and bringing dogs in from natural disasters. That means they are bringing up heartworm, they are bringing up different types of worm. We are also one of the areas in New York State that is absolutely inundated with a worm problem among our coyote population that's falling down to everything else. So whether you treat your animal or not, if your animal is in your backyard, your yard might be infested with worms. And then we're seeing that progress. So Denise will get a call that there's an emaciated dog, and it's a normal homeowner who lets their dog out in their yard, and they don't treat him for worms because their dog isn't around other dogs. Well, it might not be, There might be coyote feces in your yard, there might be rabbit feces, there might be a dead hawk.
And even after you clean up the feces,
The
it
worms
can
remain.
actually live in the soil for years, so.
So a lot of it
and a lot of people
is
don't know.
education.
Yeah,
And poor Denise running out at, 11 o'clock at night going, I swear I'm not taking your dog, please don't shoot me, I need to come on your property. I just want to give you dewormer and tell you your yard is probably infested. But it's falling on volunteers or people after they're already working 45, 60 hours a week to go out and do this education on someone's property, trying to build those relationships and rapport with people while you're getting emails, messages, calls. And it's a lot. It's a lot for our area.
some of them are welcoming, some of them are not, so.
Just imagine how you'd feel at 11 o'clock when you found out your neighbors reported you and someone shows up.
Well, we deal with scenarios too with, some individuals that are also facing other issues with maybe law enforcement, or it could be something for code violations. It seems that we frequent the same houses with code violation a lot of times, and it just seems to trickle over. So if they have a frustration with one area right now in the community, us coming in already, because we're usually either requested, we're coming in as dog controller, because someone's seen a health issue or a wellness issue, so they're already on the defense. I can, with gratification, say, other than one individual that I can think of right now in the county, I am even welcome where a lot of people are not. So once I get my foot in the door, no matter what your walks of life is, like I tell people, I don't judge you. I'm not here on the legal side of it. I'm here on the animal side of it. And if you care about your animals and you want to step up and make sure they're well taken care of, we'll work together and we will figure it out together. I will, actually, our motto that's usually posted everywhere is no animal is left behind. We will figure out a way. If you've got to rehome it because it's not doing good where you are, give us some time. We'll call the rescues for you. We'll make the postings. We'll share it where you don't know how to do the write-ups. We'll help you find a good home. We'll do the vet checks. We'll do the landlord checks. Let us work with you. So we do a lot of that too. So even though an animal might not come into rescue, we still are able to help in that level. We'll flip over to the wildlife side now. Wildlife is really challenging. It was when we first started out in the beginning, because we have done, I think, every bit of wildlife that is out there. We might need to touch Leo. We'll finish with Leo on the end. The wildlife side, now I do have to back up, because I want to hit Jessie before we go. I don't know how I forgot that whole time. So, this is Jessie. Jessie is actually one of the things that we specialize in, I guess you could say, at my rescue. And he has become the poster boy, so that whenever we are pushing an adoption event, we take Jessie, because we, as far as I know still, and correct me if I'm wrong, Corinne, is the only rescue within many miles and areas that will take FIV cats. And FIV cats, Jessie has what they call kitty AIDS. It's feline immune deficiency disease. So it's similar to like in people. It's where they might have HIV and AIDS. He has FIV that could turn into kitty AIDS. A lot of animals, the stigma from what it has done in the past is if an animal comes into a shelter, tests positive as FIV, they euthanize it. Jessie was actually slated to be euthanized at Stray Haven many years ago. And we have worked with Maddie's Meadows, Happy Tails, different organizations, and taken in the FIV, Scales, Tails, I know there's more, but over the years, and more or less, the difference with FIVs, in my opinion, and then I'll tell you the stigma, is you just have to have an understanding personality for FIV. He requires no absolute extra care, hasn't in all the years that we've had him, but we had one, for instance, that was Simba, had a lot of oral problems because of the immune deficiency, so his gingivitis would get really bad at times. He would require a regular vet visit to the vet about every 3 months for a steroid shot. If FIV ever does outbreak into kitty AIDS, my belief, and I try to educate people on this, is don't battle it. I have, in all my years of doing this, it's a very, very slim chance that they will win the battle in the end. Because they attack their immune system more than anyone else, and I have seen animals suffer trying to, I've had literally, I remember one cat at Owego Veterinarian Hospital gave me, and they were like, ooh, yeah. And a week later, I was back going, ooh, no, this is not humane, we need to let him go. So, I mean, that's the reality. You would hope you can save them all, but you don't want to do it at the expense of the animals suffering. So a lot of people though hear FIV and automatically shut down, nope, not adopting. So we take Jesse to the Cornell Feline Folly stage, we take him to most every event to go. We have many cats that come in, we have Joey at the house right now who is similar to him, but Joey is a little bit more of a, I call him a bully cat, because he likes attention, and if you do not pay attention to him, he will nibble on you, which was why we did not bring Joey.
Well, and a step beyond that, one of the reasons Denise is the only one taking them, they're immunocompromised. Shelters are disgusting. In the nicest, most polite way possible. You have people and children coming and go constantly. You have animals showing up nonstop. You're performing surgeries out back. You've got dogs coming and going for testing. You've got training going on. It's a very fluid environment. Having an FIV positive cat in a shelter setting, they're more likely to come down with something. They're more likely to be exposed to something. Denise is able to offer something that a lot of the shelters aren't. A home environment. Not as much foot traffic. Foster-based setting, so these cats are in an area where they're a little bit safer and a little bit more focused on. Stray Haven right now I think has 68 or 72 cats and 4 employees handling that. So the attention to detail you get from a foster-based setting for a cat that is at risk for an immunocompromised situation. They also, it's a bigger struggle to do turnover. For example, if you see these 2 cages we have here, carriers, Stray Haven had 12 black kittens, all FIV positive, dropped off by their mailbox at the end of their driveway, 6 cats in each, right at the beginning of winter, all FIV positive. So you have to keep them for 4 months, that's 4 months of feeding, that's 4 months of staff, that's 4 months of medical isolation in our ISO ward, where they're not coming and going and they're not adoptable. And then they get past the kitten stage, they're no longer cute, maybe they test negative, maybe they don't, and you have to embrace it on the next side. In the meantime, Denise has a flurry of people who have adopted FIV positive before or are willing to foster, so she's one of the only places that not only can and will take them knowingly, but can handle, process, find adopters, and is willing to keep them beyond that couple of months. Other
And
places,
an average adoption time for an FIV cat right now is about 2 years.
yes,
So that's roughly how long they are with us when we take one in.
yes. So she's a saving grace for everybody in the community, and actually the rest of us give her a big call every time we come across something FIV.
And we can't, and that's the hard part, is we get a lot of calls, so we can't take everyone, and that's where a lot of frustration comes in, or I would look like Dr. Doolittle. And sometimes I think I look like Dr. Doolittle when you come in, and I'm like, here's this, here's that, here's. So the wildlife side, talking about Dr. Doolittle, you can walk in my room, find a bunch of possums in one kennel, you'll find baby squirrels in another, baby rabbits in another. We have actually more recently, and I'll pass this around just so you can get an idea. These are some of just the wildlife. Oh, Leo's fault. No, don't trip on it. We have had an influx of a lot of things, but luckily in the last 3 or 4 years, we have 3 or 4 new wildlife rehabilitators that, younger ladies that have came on board. But because of kenneling arrangements, they have taken on more of like the baby squirrels, the possums. Anna loves turtles, so the turtles kind of go to Anna. You learn where ones go. I am blanking on her name that took the gerbil case,
The guinea
the
pigs?
guinea pigs.
I'm gonna.
Oh, we have another one.
She
So-
talked me into going for my test too, just so we're on the same page. She convinces everybody.
So
It's free.
this is what we have ended up specializing in. Now we do a lot of bobcats. We got hit with a lot of bobcats this year. A lot of people will tell me I am crazy because he does not look happy to see me. A lot of the bobcats are not happy to see me. That was in his kennel when I was getting ready to release him. This was our big boy that came in this year. He was, I think Cornell weighed him in at 42 pounds. He was 40-something when he came in. So we have some really, really big boys that come in. We have some huge kennels up on our hillside. We are one of the few that have the large outdoor kennels. I think my one was 22 by 12, I think it is, and it's divided into 2 slots, one for the foxes, one for the bobcats on that one. And then on the other side of the hill, we have the smaller animal, because of course you can't house one of your minks or your squirrels next to a fox or a bobcat. That's not really too humane for them. They live in stress. So we have kennels all over the hillside. It became a little bit more of a challenge this past year when my 4-wheeler decided not to run anymore because I live on a hillside, so now we had to walk up to them. The one kennel I know I posted a video of in like the 3-foot snow when we overwintered foxes that year hiking the hill. So not a glamorous job at times, not glamorous going in there cleaning the kennels either. A lot of that side of it falls back on me personally too because of liability reasons. And we get a lot of people that get frustrated with us. We can give you a lot of pictures and show you the wildlife that we're doing, but because the intent is to keep them wild and send them back out, the wildlife side you cannot visit unless you're actually one of my volunteers that's feeding and watering or working on them and you're trained under me. They're not a show, you do not just get to come up and see them. So some people are very flustered with that. We have taken in even the tiniest of tinies. We've had little voles that we have rescued. We literally leave no animal behind. We've had woodchucks. I love my woodchucks, they're moody little things. Fawns, owls, rabbits, squirrels. Sometimes we get in an animal that we don't even know what it is. It just shows up and then we start Googling and reaching out to other wildlife rehabbers. For instance, I had a bird come in and I'm looking at going, okay, I have no idea what you are. Who do we start reaching out to? And it was a bird called an American bittern. So it was literally learning from, they don't give you a whole lot of training, as you can tell when you take a weekend testing. You are licensed to rehabilitate everything under the sun as a wildlife.
That isn't rabies vector.
Yes, that's not your
I'm
raccoon
allowed to
fancy
handle
stuff.
anything that doesn't have rabies for the first year, and then
Yes.
mentoring, but I can't house anything that can have rabies until I have a setup like Denise myself.
Yep. So sometimes it's a challenge too. Sometimes when you get stuff in, you don't plan on it coming in. I was online begging and you would be amazed, and I cannot say enough good about community support though. We had literally, were kind of ignorant and said, nope, when I was in a bad car accident a couple years ago, so I have 7 discs that are messed up. And I said, nope, no 4-wheeler, not taking in any that's gonna be on the hillside this winter, I can't do it. So I let our supply level get down next to nothing. And then Cornell calls me with our big boy and says, I have a 40-some pound male bobcat. He was in Danby. He's only a 2 to 3 week rehab probably. He doesn't appear to have a whole lot of head trauma, but he had broke several teeth that had to be removed, and because of Liske infection, they couldn't send him right back out, and they wanted to make sure that head trauma eased out like they thought it would. So at that point, I'm like, oh, we have a 40-some pound bobcat, and I have no food. What do I do? So I literally went online, made a lot of connections this fall, but you would be amazed with how many people were getting ready, and I didn't even think of that until people came out of the woodwork, and we had more. We had to turn people away. But people willing to give us last year's deer meat so that we could use it for them. People who, now I have connections for ones that do like rabbit hunts and stuff, which I wouldn't have thought of. That actually, they just dispose of a lot of the game that they end up getting. So we made a lot of connections that could end up saving us money in the end through all of that as well too. But we ended up, trying to remember all we got, but we got different types of meat too that the bobcat totally loved. I'm trying to think what
Talk
the
about
one
a
was.
weird job. You wake up, you open your door in the morning, and there's random piles of meat.
Yeah. Yeah.
She has a weird life, but we all support her.
Yes, and my daughter gets a kick out of it now. She opens my freezer in the laundry room and she's like, deer meat, rabbit, frozen mice, frozen, she's like, no. No, I'm done.
Well, and one of the things we hear a lot, and I'm sure I hear it a lot, I'm sure you do too, is it's wildlife. Let nature take its course. Why are you spending your time? Why are you spending your money? So on and so forth. Part of it is we're really adjacent to Cornell. Part of it is humane education. Yes, we care about the animals. Yes, if we've made a negative impact on the community, we do feel a sense of obligation to also try to make a positive. But it's also how we figure out that the worms in this area are kind of out of control. It's also how we get an idea when distemper is flaring up and is a bit out of control. It's one of the reasons we've started advocating you can't leave water outside. You're feeding your local cat, you're feeding your dog, and you leave water outside. Water, and they're passing diseases as they share a water dish with your pet. And those are things we don't learn until we partner with Cornell, until we take a better look at wildlife, and until we all start talking back and forth. So we get that constantly, it's nature, let nature take its course, they're feral cats, let them run their course. But we're learning a lot about animal welfare and animal safety for our own pets too, and our safety. If you're outside, the more we study the animals, the more we understand them. So we get
And
that.
we are really blessed to have Cornell where we are too, because Cornell vets all of my wildlife. So unless they are, you can get a permit to possess. I will tell you that I have never actually applied for one of those, and it's a good point that you mentioned that part. I did have a really hard decision with a baby fox 2 years ago, I think it was, and you probably remember because I cry many a night over some of these situations. She does have to. But we had a litter of fox kits come in, 4 of them, and raised them all up, you know, and turned wild, and I kept watching the one, and we have cams up in the kennels too, so we can see how they're progressing when we're not around. And one of them I was just watching, and when he would try and jump up on the hay bales, the back legs would sit there and go, but he couldn't go. And the more that we worked with it, I took it back to Cornell, I told him, I said, there's something wrong with the rear ends not working completely right. Would tell him what I was seeing and stuff, and come to find out, he had a disc disease between one of the discs. You could apply for a license for a permit to possess. Same with like my rescue and all, you know, I will take the heat for the decisions on any decision I make, but it might have been different too if I had an older one, I had a different scenario. We have some that, raccoons is a common one, people raise as pets and then boom, now they're here. The people can't keep them, but they're willing to give you a license to possess. Those type situations are a little bit different. But this one was a fox kit that came in as wild, and I had to make the decision, you know, do we keep him housed for the rest of his life, or it's wildlife? And they are not intended to be domestic pets, so I did choose to have him euthanized. To me, it wasn't the right thing to do, having him kenneled in a small kennel for the rest of his life. So Financial also is a concern when you're looking at that too, and space, but, and I mean, the same with some of the difficult domestics we've taken in, that we've removed eyes, removed legs. Susie Q came in as blind and deaf, you know, and she ended up having, by the time we were working on her eyes, had a cancer that just kept coming back and back, and how many times do you do it before you let her go, and it makes some really hard decisions. And we've had a couple dogs. I had one come in that was a really bad abuse case. They needed a single adult, no child, somebody I could trust that would never give them a chance of biting anyone anywhere, and we just couldn't do it because it was so broken. It had went after toddlers, it had killed 2 small dogs in its history, and I mean, not a basic just dog attack, it was a gruesome dog attack. So I mean, that type of home is just, it's too much of a liability, and it's too much of a community risk to put an animal back out like that.
Well, and that brings us back, talking humane cases, talking things we've had to do in the last couple of years. This is the woman who called me at about, I wanna say 11:45 at night one night, to tell me she was getting calls from the sheriff that there was a dog who had sent both of his owners hella back to the hospital, and they couldn't get into the house. And they called us. And we went, well, we're not going to the house. You want us to try to enter that dog's territory at night while it's in a heightened state of frenzy? No, thank you. But there's nowhere for that dog to go. There's nobody who's gonna rehab it. There's nobody who's gonna try to handle it, not in our area. We're short-staffed, there's no money, there's nobody with training in this area. So there's nothing to happen with that dog. That dog had that house for a little while, until that dog was euthanized. But we have these situations, and we're out
And that
trying
was
to
one
catch
way,
it
like
before
I
it
had
gets
told
done.
him, from the moment I heard this scenario, you would hope that every animal is fixable in some aspect, but to that, it would just, it's too unpredictable. That one had came from a decent home for 3 years, for whatever reason, snapped in the middle of one of the owners tossing a ball in the living room, to the extent that a man lost his arm from it. I mean, he just went off on the son and the son's father. Some of you might have heard about this case, and they could not literally get this dog off of the 2 people, and by the time he got done, I mean, the injuries were severe enough. Both of them required surgery, and one of them lost an arm. At that point, to me, even, and I think a lot of people lose that concept that I don't know how many times I get frustrated with hearing it, and I understand the intent behind it, but when people automatically tell me they're a member of my family, that statement for me always sends up red flags, because the majority of situations that you hear like that is people lose perspective of they are still an animal, they are still a dog, they are still a canine. One of my other most frustrating statements is, oh, they're super lovable, they're wonderful around us, and then you put them in a different setting and you can't understand why they react that way. And, you know, you see it all the time, but then there also comes a point of where it's a risk on it too. So we make a lot of hard decisions. We turn away some people for the safety of the other animals. When we listen to scenarios with some of the aggressive dogs, I have a house full of FIV cats. I have Leo right now. At times I have, who is this, peacefully sleeping and listening to me? I've had, yeah, and they have free range, so even like Leo comes out and he runs through the house, and a couple of times he's ran down in the registers, and I've spent poo noodles trying to shove him back out of the registers and get him back out. So it's always enlightening, but then when you bring in any animal, people don't understand that, is that everybody has to blend. And I have some broken ones at my house. I have, she's gonna laugh at this. I have Jake, who, I'm sorry, I call him my pisser, for the simple reason of Jake has a severe anxiety issue. Jake was an abandonment. would not have done well at Stray Haven, so we chose to take him in. But whenever he gets nervous about anything, such as even if I have a visitor, he will be everywhere.
Regular cattle dog, by the way, for those of you who are familiar with the breed, those dogs that are bred to keep heifers in line,
Yes.
very confident around a cow, not around people.
Yes.
So
He's-
finding a good placement for him.
And he has tangled a couple times with Bear. Bear is our hellhound beagle. Bear was adopted out 4 times and returned 4 times over 5.5 years. So at that point, Bear was a bad abuse case too, and we decided that we just weren't putting him through it anymore. So Bear is a lifetimer at my house. Jake, if I ever find anyone with the right tender heart that understands what they're dealing with, Jake is up for adoption too. When I
Theoretically.
take them in, they do not have a deadline, huh?
I said theoretically, they're all
Yeah.
up for adoption.
Yes, there is not a deadline, so same as with Jake. I mean, it's frustrating. I'm not idiotic. There's not a lot of people that when you look at him going, yeah, he's probably going to pee in your house once a month or more, depending on who comes to see you. It's not an adoptable quality, so it's a little more challenging. Some of the cats we have in our house right now, Wendy, Kit Kat, they're more on the skittish side, but they came in from TNR colonies. You hope that they turn out to be lovable like Jessie, and some of them just never mature to that sense. I got mature. Every one of them I can handle, but it's somebody, when people come to adopt a cat too, they want Jessie. They want to love you, hug you, cuddle you, especially when you have 72 options you can go to Stray Haven and see. Where Wendy and Kit Kat and Mama Go and a lot of them.
Well, and Kit Kat was a special case. Kit Kat lived with me. Kit Kat was feral. Kit Kat decided that she wanted to murder me, and I loved her anyway. We had a good relationship, and then all of her fur fell out and her skin started to peel off. Kit Kat has some severe food allergies. That was a very fun late night call. I was sending her videos and she showed up at my doorstep 20 minutes later with, "Give me that cat back."
And no offense to her, I'm like, okay, most of the high medical, just because it's easier, because of running them to vets and all, most of the high medical end up back at my house. If they're healthy, happy, just tame them down type ones, I usually send them out. It's also, we have some fosters, we kind of learn our fosters. Corinne's got a little more solid of a heart, but I have some either, sometimes when you put some of the sicker ones that they can't handle with the reality of ones that come in really compromised, if they pass away on them. When you take in a failed set of kittens, if every one of them survive, you're actually doing good. That's the reality of it. So when you have someone, it's a very emotional burnout to sit there and nurse a litter of 6 and 2 to 4 of them survive. And they just start dropping, and a lot of people don't realize it happens, it really does.
And a lot of what we're doing, a lot of the reason we're here, seeing all of you lovely people, education. It's humane education, it's filling you in on what we're seeing, it's a lot of prevention. And there's a lot that we learn just from experience. There's a lot I learned from Denise from panicked calls late at night as I go, what is this thing on this cat? And it's a lot of...
Botflies. And nobody knows what a botfly is till they have one that like, there's a big bulge moving all around them. I'm like, I think I know what it is, I'll be right there.
But it's kind of our place, and we both have full-time jobs. I teach 6th grade and I'm a librarian and I hostess, and Denise works for the state. And we are both putting in 40 to 60 hours at our normal human being jobs, and then we are coordinating with the sheriff's department in the middle of the night for a dog in a trailer. It's a lot of passing that on to other people, trying to promote some patience, and then help the sheriff's department. And a lot of what we find ourselves is, you know, I'm sure you all remember the gator that got loose in the Susquehanna a couple of years ago, or the one a few years before that in Endicott. There was a tank of piranha on Lake Street in Owego that was abandoned. Monitor lizards. We've gotten calls about exotics. We've gotten calls about wildlife that have been attempted to be tamed. People who have pet raccoons. And fielding all of this, transferring it into education, we're trying to focus on education prevention. We're trying to get to the animals and get them to a safe spot. And then we have some really severe cases, and it would be nice to have another side to the team sometimes.
So I will pass this around, and we'll finish up with Leo real quick. And I'm going to take Leo's ball and let's take all of it.
This one was a different ball, Denise.
So, Leo, hi Leo, you're awake again, huh? Do you hear your ball? I'm just going to stick your ball in with you for a minute. So Leo, this just gives you an idea, also the backside. This was actually the paperwork I had wrote up, and it gives you some pictures to show you how far Leo came and show you somebody's journey. Actually, I'll pass to, I'll start one in the back, one in the front. And there's some pictures in there, and it's just some documentation if you want to look through it. But it gives you an idea of what you see a lot of times and how intense a situation can be. So Leo, actually, we got a phone call from the sheriff's department that they were down at Depot Motel, and this was on the very beginning onset of COVID. Somebody had been housed there, and actually it was March 27th, 2020, and they had went in to clean out one of the rooms from an individual that they had housed there, and the house cleaning staff had found Leo. Leo was actually in a kennel, confined, which always frustrates me because if people are going, abandon your animals, I would prefer you at least let him loose so they have a fighting chance. But they did not. They left him, and it was a rabbit-type cage, and he had been in there for quite some time. No one will ever know exactly how long, but by the time they thought they were just carrying the kennel out with him, he actually ended up, they realized he was breathing. Leo was unresponsive, you'll see from the pictures in the beginning. We had rushed him to the vet. We literally had to keep him on IV fluids in the beginning. He could not stand any type of solid diet. We had started out going from subcutaneous fluids on him to chicken broth by syringe every half hour with supplements. He was finally able just even to hold his head stable. He still couldn't walk for quite some time. We had him on heating pads because he couldn't regulate his body temperature. By the time he got done, his muscles, and it has some pictures towards the end, it shows how he had literally withered away to nothing. There was nothing left on Leo, you'll see on the pictures. We literally had, and some of this you learn as you go, literally. We have always gotten in healthy fats, so when Leo came in, I'm looking at him going, okay, what do we do with you? So the vet showed me how to literally do butterfly subcutaneous fluids, and that's how we fed him in the beginning. And then it was just, a lot of it's time consuming. We had to feed him by syringe, and then we ended up, when they said, well, you gotta do physical therapy with him to rebuild his muscles. I'm like, I gotta do physical therapy on the ferret. Okay.
Fun
I
news,
said-
there is an animal physical therapist in the valley for anyone who needs. We
Yes.
do have one locally.
Yeah, so I did reach out, and I found people that would tell me how you do this. So we literally, for weeks, had to take gauze wraps with our volunteers, and we trained our volunteers to do it. We had some high school students that were wonderful with this. You had to put gauze wraps under his front legs and his back legs, which show one of the pictures, because he couldn't stand on his own, he wobbled, and you had to literally mimic and walk him. So that slowly, he learned how to use his legs and rebuild the muscles. And then hit the funny stage, because then as he started rebuilding him, he was all gung-ho to go, but he had no coordination. So it was funny watching him in the beginning and stuff. And then over time, you seen Leo when you came in, that's what makes it all worthwhile. It was a long haul for him. I think it was, let's see, so from the time he came in, yeah, it was over a month before we could get him to stand again. And then he was finally able to stand and cleared. And then you learn a little bit as you go. So I remember in the beginning, I was like, okay, I have the ferret. Now we got a state law says we have to have him spayed and neutered. And so I searched all over trying to find a vet to neuter a ferret. Finally find one down in Pennsylvania, and I sounded like an idiot because I called them, scheduled the appointment. They're like, wonderful. And then I had to call them back like 2 weeks later and cancel the appointment because somebody says to me, I'm surprised with ferrets being exotic animals that he's not already neutered. I said, well, I don't think he is. I don't know how to really tell. They're like, well, the blue dots. I'm like, blue dots? What are you talking about? Every ferret that is sold in New York has to be spayed or neutered, and they tattoo the inner side of their ear. Nobody ever told me this, never had a ferret, didn't know that. So, my experience has been with cats and dogs, so I'm looking around the private areas, looking for a book. There wasn't none.
Which good news, we also tattoo your cats and dogs. We do that for any high volume clinic
Yep.
where animals
So
will
that's
come
where I
out,
was
they will
looking.
be
Who
drugged.
thought it was in the air?
Wrong spot.
So we slowly learn as we go, same with the wildlife. Like I said, some comes in, we don't know how we're housing them, we don't know what type of play they want to mimic the old natural, how do you get in, like when we had the Singleton Bobcat kitten, and they said, well, you have to teach it to hunt. Okay, I am a female lady, and you want me to stimulate the hunting response in a bobcat. That was interesting, but come to find out, it wasn't actually that hard. It was anchoring all types of different types of toys out of his reach and around so he could get the idea of pouncing and stuff. That was heartbreaking though. That was the first one that it never really dawned on me until the time, and then it did. And I remember, I think I cried to you too, along with 5 other people going, okay, this was the first one that came in as a kitten. Most of them come in as adults, and foxes are more easily trainable. You should have seen my surprise the first time Cornell looked at me and said, well, you do know you have to feed it live prey. I do what? So they don't teach you much, so I gave it a chicken. And then I sat down at the house and realized he was not so good of a hunter, and I just cried, and I said, I can't go back up there, and I left the house for an hour, and I said, okay, Mr. Bobcat, you got one chance and one chance only. I know you know how to do the deed, you better figure it out in the wild, because I can't do that anymore. So some of it is figuring out as you go, figuring out what you can and can't do too. It's a hard thing. It's a stressful job. It's a stressful job on the animal side. It's a stressful job on the people. Job. We get paid. Job.
In love.
Yes.
Sometimes.
We do.
Blood.
Do you have any questions on any particular ones or anything?
I'm curious about the bobcats. How do you, do they come to you injured? Is that how you
Yes.
get them?
Most all of the wildlife that we get either come through the DEC officer, the community, or Cornell. Most all of the large animals, the bobcats, actually, trying to think, I think every one of them had came from Cornell, because even the one that the DEC officer picked up, they took it there for evaluation first. So we work closely with Cornell's Wildlife Clinic. I'm trying to think. I don't think there's been any other scenarios with bobcats other than vehicle impacts and orphans on any of them that we got. Actually, probably about the majority of our wildlife that we take in, now that I'm thinking about it, of adults is vehicle impacts. You get a lot of that. So I know that was the thing with, like I said, the male bobcat that we just released, our last one in November. He was up off of Fisher Settlement Road and got struck by a car, but just enough that rolled him, knocked him unconscious. But let me tell you, a day later, he was fully alert again. Knocked him unconscious, but had done a lot of damage to his one jaw and teeth. So Cornell had done the surgery and everything, and then sent it out for rehab with us. The kit was actually one that somebody didn't realize it was a bobcat kitten that they picked up originally, and by the time it made its way to Cornell, then they sent it out to us. Actually, this year, every one of our bobcats came from Danby. So, and then, that's the most challenging part, and I go, that's why I own a Jeep, as I say, I go where no man should ever go. Because we release them back close to the site they were found, within like a 3-mile radius, but we will go up in back road, seasonal road type locations, so at least it starts them away from the road and stuff, but like Fisher Settlement, I'm not even sure. I am not beyond asking anyone for anything, so I was actually driving around Danby one day, seeing Michigan Hollow's known for the hikers. I pulled over and asked some old guy that was out walking, I said, "You hunt around here?" He's like, "Yep, all my life." I said, "Good." Then I have a bobcat in the back. I need a release site. I said, "He needs a good source of food, but away from people." He's like, "Oh, if you take here and here," and he led me somewhere. I had another woman with me. When we turned down there, I'm like, "Are you sure this is actually a road?" But it was once you got up there, because they actually had Finger Lakes camping sites up on top of the hill and stuff. I mean, it was one of those that you're bouncing, it's like going up past the hills up in Prospect Valley on some of them. So we release sites, we're always looking for release sites. When you talk about coyotes, the coyote, we did a lot of soft release of foxes up on my land, and then once the coyote population like flourished up there for some reason, I miss my hunters on that side, we ended up starting to outsource so that we had a couple that went up off of Tuttle Hill this year. We had a couple that went over off of like West Creek area and stuff too. So you will see us on Facebook too when it comes time go. We're looking for release sites for this animal or that animal. And we also base it on some animals are more territorial than others, so we don't want to put them in a location if they need the space that they're more territorial on, such as male bobcats. And with male bobcats, not such a good mix. If you know there's an established one there, but females are usually fine and stuff, so we try and figure that out when we're releasing them.
We learn a lot.
Yes.
A lot of random knowledge we pick up.
So does Cornell, do they absorb the cost for these, or do you have to?
They do for your releasables, for any animal that the sole intent is to release them back out. Cornell does pay through their grants or the rehabilitation. If we have one that comes in, for instance, like if I had kept that fox cat as a non-releasable, then they do end up charging us for the vet care on them.
They're able to cover a lot through grants because it's an educational thing for them.
Yeah.
Their students get to learn, their
Yes.
vets get to learn more, and it's good for our ecosystem.
And their knowledge, and what they share back with us, like right now, we get, well, I call it hits, but I guess it's not the hits. It always dings on our messenger from them, but right now there's like a special avian disease thing that they're trying to monitor too, that's finally just hit Suffolk County, and it's causing a lot of neurological issues with different flocks of birds and stuff. So they also coordinate a lot with the rehabilitators, because the stuff that we might be seeing that never makes it to them because it's deceased animals or whatever, they can end up tracking. And then they done it when there was an outbreak with deer before with different stuff. But they'll say like, you know, we're seeing an outbreak of this. If you have animals that are showing these signs, please bring them to us and stuff. And then that way they can also test and monitor and figure out disease prevention and control and where it's going.
You ever deal with wild ferrets?
Oh, yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah, wild ferrets and wild minks. Minks are a lot like ferrets too. I just had a mink last year, I think it was. That little thing was very intimidating. And they are fast. So, you know, it's one of those things that he was one of my educational ones that sometimes you don't think ahead and then you pay the penalty afterwards. So I put him in one of the big outdoor kennels, and then I said, I have to get you back in a crate to put you back out. You know? So that was a challenge, and they are very confrontational, unlike squirrels and everyone else. So trying to go up to him to get him back in the crate, I kept thinking, please don't let me lose a finger. But then the mink was one, it's a good point there too, where you talk about release sites in the community. That was the first one that opened up the door to working with the Finger Lakes Land Trust and getting permission to release on some of the sites, because there was a perfect release site for the mink over in town of Caroline, so that's where he ended up going. So we network a lot with different organizations that, I mean, a lot of what we do, like I said, it's day by day, and there's no rhyme or reason. If there's a need, there we are, and we figure it out as we go.
Your owls that you get, you have to feed them mice?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Mice in a pinch, if you don't have them, they also love raw chicken on a skewer. So there's different things. Owls is one of those hard decision ones too that a lot of people don't think of. Head trauma in an owl, if owl loses sight in one of his eyes, he can never hunt again in the wild properly. So that's another one. It is easier with your owls and your raptors and things like that to find educational facilities and placements for them, and falconers and tanglewood, and I mean, lots of different places. When you get in some of your bigger animals like your foxes and stuff, it's a lot more difficult.
And those are all different licenses. So
Oh, yeah.
you have your wildlife rehab license, and then your wildlife rabies vector license, and then you have dangerous animal, crocodilian, falconry. So you have to work your way up and get additional licenses once you prove that you can handle things that bite.
Yes.
The fisher cats, have you run into any of those?
No. And I say that very happily, because I've heard they are, and from other rehabbers, I do know other rehabbers that have had them. But the reality with a lot of the fishers, because they're so predatory, there's not a whole lot of compassion for the people in the community to assist them with rehabilitating. So the majority of them that are coming closer to homes and stuff end up either being trapped or shot or poisoned or many things like that. So, and they actually, even the ones that have gotten them in, they were from other situations. There's not a whole lot of vehicle impacts with fishers that I've ever heard of, probably because they're so fast.
Well, and one of the things we point out with anything predatory is a lot of people see them as a danger to their home or their pets, so better off dead.
Mhm.
Then we end up with a deer population with severe mange, we end up with incestuous predators that are no longer able to hunt the way they should, and we start to see prey populations out of control that are spreading disease because there's too many in a small area. Which is why we approve the hunting licenses. It's why we're not opposed to hunting, because we're not opposed to hunting, we're not opposed to fishing.
Well,
You
that's
have
why
to-
you don't know how many times I hear that, where they're like, well, I would give you, I'm like, I eat venison, it's okay, and but a lot of people do, they think if you're in rescue, you must be, I don't know how many years, actually, told me that. They would have assumed I was a vegetarian. I said, no, I said, the easiest way I can sum it up for people, I'm against factory farming, severely. If anyone ever hears me get off on my tangent about that, support your local farmers, support your hunters, get your kids back educated and out there hunting. You need to go backwards on some stuff, not forward.
But we had a meeting a couple months ago, and one of the local falconers, she does a hawk, which, by the way, there are falconers, and they do need help chasing the prey out for the falcons to get.
Mhm.
So sometimes they just need bush beaters. If anybody's ever interested in that, we get those calls. But she went up and down someone for having a hawk feather. Avid hunter, avid fisher, you cannot have a feather. Some of the things, it's illegal at this point in our state for you to own any product of a falcon. So she saw someone had hawk feather earrings and lost it, but she's out hunting and fishing. So a lot of it is just trying to maintain the ecosystem, and that looks a little bit different to every rehabber or rescue you're gonna run into. That's why we talk about cat colonies. That's why we talk about keeping the dogs in check. That's why we talk about not leaving your dogs out unattended, because coy dogs are a real problem. Dogs that are domestic bred with coyotes have puppies. So we do have coy dogs, and that is an issue more so in Pennsylvania on that side of the border than up here, but there's a lot, we learn a lot to pass on
And
to
some of
everyone
it
else.
too is really safety issues too. I remember the raccoon at Dandy, I remember the fox at Cornell sent me. I've had my run-in where you cannot actually tell between distemper and rabies a lot of times, but you can tell if the animal's infected. We had over at Dandy, I got a phone call and the sheriff's department couldn't be out there, but there was a woman running around the parking lot with a cardboard box trying to catch this raccoon. And I said, okay, I'm on my way down. I drove down, sheriff's department had called me, drove down. And I just took one look at the raccoon, and I know I probably wasn't overly nice to her in the heat of the moment. I always apologize to people later on, but I'm like, you need to get back. You know, ended up covering it with her box, took her box, covered it, put a thing on it, but then it is devastating to some people. On that one, we had to shoot it on site, and you can't rehabilitate that. We have a fox that had been sent to us by Cornell for head trauma. It went up in my upper kennels. 2 days later, I walked up there. I had a volunteer, Irene, coming over. I looked at it. I called her, told her not to bother. I called my regular full-time job, who luckily I've been with the county for many years, so I have a lot of time off. And told them, I said, I have one I gotta take back to Cornell and I can't trust anyone else to. I've had my baby vector series prevention shots. Not everyone, actually, I don't think any of my volunteers have, other than one that was a vet student. So even in that scenario, just because of risk of biting, when I walked in that kennel and I'm like, yeah, no, you're going back. And then they did end up testing that one because it was found in Catatunk, and a lot of people had had direct contact with it before it made it to me. So sometimes you don't even know what you're looking at until time goes on and people don't understand that. Deer, I don't know how many calls I've gotten for adult deer on the side of the road that people really think that when we show up, we're gonna be able to rehabilitate them and put them back out there. Reality, if you have a downed adult deer because of DEC regulations, I believe it's back to 3 days right now, they have to be released and rehabilitated in that short amount of time. And if you have a broken limb of any kind, you can't do it. Not to mention, some people don't understand trying to splint and rehabilitate some of your wildlife in those instances. Sometimes that's why we choose to euthanize too, is just the chances of repairing the damage that is done back to the state it was prior. It's next to impossible.
You get a lot of feral cats?
Oh yeah, we could get more than what we do have.
How do they come to you, or do
We
people
trap
call?
them, we usually trap them. Usually it's people that call us. I know the one Ketchumville case, I know Water Street, we'll have people call us because it just inundated, and when we go in and we usually clean the house on a colony like that, I go have people call and go, yeah, I think I got about 20 cats out. Yeah, I know, that's what they told me on Ketchumville, and we ended up with almost 80. So, I mean, because they will live where you don't even see them or know it, and you just keep trapping, and every time you go back, you have a new cat, and then we end up clipping the ears, and then that's the challenging part. We had one on Straits Corners we worked on forever too. That is actually where this one came from, that we had 3 of them, I think, from her residence that we had to have eyes removed on and stuff. They were just in horrible conditions when we got over there. And you just start at a residence, and that's where a lot of people don't realize. They call us, they're like, well, I have this cat problem, and you know, on a good morning, I'm usually very chipper, and then sometimes I'm like, yeah, and 5,000 other people in Tioga County.
Well, and that's an excellent question, because part of the education we do is there's a difference between a feral cat colony and an under-socialized colony. So under-socialized means in somebody's formative development, these cats were exposed to people. They're the cats where someone puts food out and they see people, they associate people with food, they associate people with good things. And there are feral cats that they're wildlife.
Any wildlife I've ever dealt with.
But we've had a couple of ferals where if I put butter on my hand long enough, and we eyeball each other for a while, that cat is never gonna be Jessie, but that cat could be a cat's cat. Tinkerbell was an excellent example. Tinkerbell lived with me. She hated that I breathed and existed, hated humans, but someone called and they wanted a cat for their cat. And now Tinkerbell is Spike's best friend, and Tinkerbell still hates her new owner, but she and Spike are buddies. So, we always say it.
Yep, and they, I remember that, calling that first time, just going, she's on Lake Street is called, right, down there, she says, my cat just sits in the window and watches everyone walk by, and I feel she's so lonely, I just want a friend for her, I'm like, we got one for you.
And we couldn't touch her. I got Tinkerbell, caught her, got her in a towel, and was like, you can touch her, but please don't. We put her in the cage, and she laid flat, and the woman touched her and went,
Pancake, that's right, we call it pancake.
Spike will like pancake, and we went, good, excellent, goodbye. And it works, and sometimes you're able to do that. One of the things Denise tells us all the time is if the animal's still willing to fight, we're fighting for the animal. So if you've got a cat that's willing to try to adjust to a home life, and it's a huge difference. There's different smells, there's different tastes, everything is wondering if they have access to resources. It's a lot of learning behavior and animal behavior.
And there's some that just, from the moment they come in that they won't, and people, TNR is a very argumentative program, period, because and I understand both sides of it, especially people are always amazed that I do TNR trapping and I do wildlife rehabilitation, so I'm trapping the feral cat, sending them back out to kill the bird that I rehabilitated. I get it, but I believe in equal chance for everyone. What happens once you go back out, it's life, but there are some that, I don't believe in euthanizing them because they've lived this long and they figured it out and they're not responsible for what their environment is, so I don't believe personally that we are the ones that have that right to judge on them.
So do you get them spayed or neutered
Oh,
before
yeah.
you go?
Spayed, neutered, vaccinated, and then the ones that are like semi-feral that won't do good in a house, even though it's more limited, we are always outreaching to find bonds that are looking for ones. A lot of people don't want the cost, they don't feel like they should have the cost, but they're willing to give me a place to put them and feed them in the winter when times are more hard and your numbers might be down, so.
We tend to talk about those as our working cats. You need a
Yes.
cat for a factory, one that's gonna kill all your mice, we've got a couple. You want somebody to keep your barn clean, and they keep other predators away, which is excellent for what you're trying to house, so.
Yep.
We have tackled
Yep,
it.
so we try and find the right home for the right animal at the right time.
Everybody gets trapped, everybody gets burrs and ticks and mice and flies picked off of them, pulled out of them, cleaned off of them.
Unhappily, with bite gloves.
Everybody is groomed, cleaned, bathed, ready, spayed, neutered, ears cleaned, nails tipped if they need to be tipped, ears tipped. When you see a cat that has the ear cropped off the corner, it means they've already been caught by somebody. So it's a quick visual for people to see if we're trying to go through a colony. We had Tomcat on North Ave. He's been out there 11 years. I just caught him this July because all his canine teeth fell out. He finally got desperate enough to come out of that cemetery, but he has been impregnating every cat over there for 11 years. So we got him, and he is currently drooling on my couch, a giant pathetic blob of a cat. But it takes a while, and luckily, even if they're 100 feet out, ear tip, you can see they've already been caught. Leave it alone, it's fine. But
And your most frustrating ones are when you're working through a colony, and when you have the ones that have like 80, you're trapping, and every time you go back, because you usually have to check the traps every 4 hours roughly, no matter the weather, sometimes every 2 hours, and you go back and the same chunky butt is in the trap every single time. And you're like, you just need to stay out of it, I need some of the other ones. But now they're just like, ooh, there's food in there, you put me back out, I got this. So yeah, it's a challenge, and you have to laugh at it sometimes when you're out there. You laugh, then you cry, then you lean on each other.
Well,
'Cause
and you meet the weirdest of people in the weirdest situations. I'll tell you my favorite story was about this gorgeous itty bitty Siamese looking kitten. Loved her. She was born in my house, right? We took in a pregnant cat, figured if you take them home, the less stress they're under, the better they oxygenate their kittens. So the more material their babies get, the better the babies do. That's why you see cats born in shelters have diluted colors. It's because the mom was under a lot of stress. So, bring them home, let them give birth, it'll be fine. 4 kittens, doing great. 5th baby can't find a boob to save her life. Trying to figure out what's going on. Well, she's blind. Eyes never opened properly, she went blind, mom isn't feeding her well enough. Come to find out, if you don't feed her every 45 minutes, she has a seizure. She is too little and doesn't have enough blood in her body for us to perform surgery to save this kitten, but she is fighting. I, home alone, summer vacation, feeding a kitten every 45 minutes, way worse than taking care of a human infant. Human infants aren't going to seizure if you don't. Absolutely emotional hot mess. Denise was one who found me crying, sobbing, half dressed, holding this kitten, panicked. But we advertised that we need help. And a lovely retired couple who said, we'll take turns. You can sleep night shift, I'll sleep day shift. We haven't done this in 40 years, but cool. They made a car seat. Meeser is now 2.5, blind, has other kitten friends. They've taken several of our disabled pets, and she is the sunshine of their life. So,
And
we
they
say
even
they
adopted
fight,
my
we fight.
Percussionist. I mean, you never know what you're gonna get in. I had someone call me once and say, I have an algae eater. I said, fine. Algae eater came to me and was like that long. I'm like, okay, I'm used to seeing him like that in the pet store. So, found someone, she was the one that had a huge big tank, and I'm like, do its job.
But we make connections, we build friendships, we build rapport with everybody in the community, and if they're willing to fight, we're fighting for them. And it's a lot of education, it's a lot of coming out and talking to all of you, finding out what you need and what we can do to
We're
help.
always looking for fosters, because my fosters only have a 50-50 rate. That's why I always tell people, you either love fostering and you continue, like Corinne, or like half of my puppy moms now from the Yorkies that started out as puppy moms fosters are now foster failures. And Teddy and Toby's owner kept them, the 2 in PA kept them, and we probably had well over a dozen. And you know, that is the hard reality. After you take an animal in your home, that's an extended rehab, and they're there for, I always say if they're there for more than 6 months, I have a really good foster if they can give it back after that. You know, it's hard.
Well, and that's one of the things we fall into with humane cases. We need help taking care of the cats or the dogs or whatever else we grab for the sheriff's department for the duration of the court case because they are court property. So they're evidence. You will be questioned by the sheriff for fostering. You do have to go through all of the extensive, they want to know what your house setup is, what you're
To
doing.
give you an idea, I think the Beagle was 2.5 years?
Yes.
2.5 years pending a court case on that one.
So you have to agree to have this dog for 2.5 years and the chance that the judge might say, give it back to the owner we seized it from. It's a really, really hard position. It's a hard position for a lot of our fosters to go through. I'm at 129 right now, 129 in 2 years. I've only failed on 3 cats. But it's a hard thing. You fall in love and they go. We do a lot of hospice fostering. Sometimes you get a dog and he's gonna stay with you and he might not get adopted and he's 13, 14. He might pass away in your home. Are you willing to hospice care? Are you willing to wildlife rehab? There's a lot that we're able to offer and a lot we're able to educate people on.
Well, you just covered so I can go on a vacation for 2 weeks. You should have seen me trying to plan to go to Costa Rica this last fall. And I'm like, okay, I need somebody brave enough to feed the bobcat, because I had the one bobcat kitten at that time. I'm like, I need a bobcat fed, I need the ferret taken care of, I need the cats, I need this. And then you forget little things, like I was down in Costa Rica and all of a sudden I'm asking the one person that was at the house, I'm like, so how many cans of food has Chase went through? And they're like, what? I said, oh, I did remember to tell you that the one Chihuahua doesn't have any teeth left in. They're like, no, and he was managing somehow. Luckily, it was only 2 days, but talk about guilt-ridden, and I'm like, I thought I had everything on my list, and you just get so used to doing the routine in the morning. Completely forgot to mention to him, yeah, buy the cat food, there's a dog food too, the moist goes to the chihuahua with hardly any teeth left.
Did you guys have any other questions for us?
Very good.
Thank you.
And if you want any business cards for any reason, we have a bunch of business cards here, and like I said, don't ever hesitate to give us a call if you need advice or you need anything.
Take that can.
That's what they're there for, and if you ever hear of teenagers needing community service hours, we've worked with probationers to do community service hours. Anyone that is willing to give in any capacity, we will find a place for you. If you don't want direct, I have one woman that doesn't want to do hands-on whatsoever, so she does every one of like our community outreach ones. She does a lot of fundraising events for us and stuff like that, so you don't even have to do the hands-on play with the animals so much. And then we'll take the down dirty ones. You want to just bathe, nail clip, yeah, it doesn't sound like a lot, but come in my house and comb him.
It's an excellent excuse to avoid your spouse for a few hours, is all we're saying.
Yes. Jesse loves being combed. COVID hit and I couldn't find a groomer and I tried shaving Jesse myself. He hates me for life, I think. He felt better, but he looked horrible.
No, Jesse couldn't beat you for life. He's a good handsome boy.
Well, thank you.